You may have seen today's guests on social media or known him for his knife making, but today we actually get to meet the man behind Balete Blades. Let's welcome Sean Alonzo on the podcast. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Chino. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I know you don't usually interview people, but or get interviewed by people, but thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk knives with me. It sounds very
Yeah,
psychotic,
the
but
pleasure is
that's
mine.
really so we're gonna
Yeah,
talk
I know.
about
It's
things.
always a pleasure to talk to an enthusiast, regardless of the industry they're in.
Right, right.
And I know you
So
mentioned. Yeah, no, I
yeah,
know
go
you
ahead.
mentioned when you invited me here, you're a fan of Forged and Fire. So that just made me giggle a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah,
We're gonna get into all of that, forging fire, bladesmithing, all of that. We're gonna do all of that. But first, I want to get to know the person who does all the smithing, all the knife making. How did you get into this industry? Because this seems like such a very unorthodox way to earn a living.
yeah. No, it's been a little bit weird. My background is I was a professional product designer, and I have a degree from Benil in industrial
Okay.
design. And
Fellow
I used
Benildian, yes.
yeah. Oh, you're from Benil also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, fun fact, the people working on this podcast also from Benil. So, madami
Oh,
tayong
hey
Benilians
guys.
dito. Yeah. Let's go
Nice.
SDA.
Yeah. Yeah. So I worked for as a product designer for a while. Although I was starting to see I didn't really like what I was doing because like if you work on a product for a very long period of time and then eventually I know that these products will only last a certain lifespan, right? I used to do fast-paced consumer products. Like I worked for a company that did like 1,000 pieces, 10,000 pieces, 100,000 pieces. So the things that I knew I was making would end up in the ocean inside some sea turtle after like
Right.
a few
Right.
years, and I
Yeah.
didn't really like that. I have no gripe against people who do that. It's just not something I wanted to do with my life. I always had a hobby for making things like ever since I was little. And back in college, I had a mentorship with Ryan Howe. Ryan Howe is a sculptor for 13 Lucky Monkey. 13
Okay.
Lucky is this jewelry sculpting company. And they opened my eyes to mixed materials. Like I really enjoyed how they were able to mix silver, brass, gemstones. I'm not sure if they did wood, but then I saw how they were able to craft like these really intricate rings using not just one. Like they used several materials to make something that looked really good. So I wanted to do something like that. So in my spare time, as I was working as a product designer, I'd like I'd sometimes make rings. Although I, I did it secretly just for personal use. And then I thought, I could start making knives because it's a tool, right? I was an industrial designer, and industrial design is basically the design of everyday things, cars, lamps, and something that I really enjoyed doing was making a tool. So I thought either hammers or knives. I screwed up with a hammer, but then I made a knife relatively successfully, and then people were asking how much it was, and then I
Wow.
thought,
Okay.
I'm not gonna sell this. I already have a job, and I didn't want to, get into th- actually I did. I did want to do my own thing, but then I didn't think I was ready to sell the work. So after a while, I felt super restless with my initial design job. So I started like posting a lot of my work online, and I got a Blade Forum subscription. Blade Forums is this online community of knife enthusiasts. And at that time, when I got the subscription, like I was, putting my work out there. I wasn't really expecting to sell anything. And at that time, that wasn't the focus. At that time, the focus was to like make a really good tool because I like making really good tools. Something I could actually use myself. And then people started like giving me offers like, hey, are you willing to sell this? And how much are you willing to sell it? And then I was just like throwing around random prices at that time. It's like I didn't have any computation. I was just throwing around prices. And then after a while, I jumped ship. It's like this is getting a little bit crazy. It's like I think I could make this into my full-time work. And that's what I did. Right now, so yeah, it got to a point where right now my current wait list is already a year long. And
Wow.
yeah, the price point is relatively comfortable at where it is. So yeah, it's been a really strange ride.
Right. No, because you said it yourself. It's strange. So, what was the transition like? Like, how did your family feel about you leaving a stable job to go into business for yourself? How did you adjust? How was that whole process like?
Well, I'd say it was a stable job, but then it wasn't a comfortable, stable job. I had to fly into Iligan in Mindanao to
Okay.
work for that company
Oh,
because that was where their satellite office was. And the pay was not bad, but then I wasn't happy with the workload because in fast paced product manufacturing, you have to keep putting new things out. Like we did like so many products per month, like 40 to 60. And some of these products like we had to design from scratch, and others like there were already existing templates for it. We just changed it up a little bit. But then it was a lot of work, and there was five of us in the design team at that time. I think five. It's like around, yeah, around five. I can't remember.
right.
But then we were doing like 10 to 12 hour work days, and it was really insane. And sometimes we even did Saturdays. And
Right.
since the company was task based, we didn't get paid overtime or anything like that. We were compensated. We were compensated a flat rate based on the tasks that we were able to achieve. It's
Right.
like I remember one time I even came home from the office at like 1 a.m. So
Wow.
it
Okay.
was, yeah.
And then you had to
And
go back to work the next day at 9 a.m.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They were
Okay.
like very particular about coming into the office at 9 a.m. But then there was no cutoff time. Like
Wow.
so it was really uncomfortable. And like sometimes we had to stay the whole day in the office on a Saturday. It's like
Wow.
no one wants to go to work on a Saturday.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah. And at that time, Iligan is like 2 hours away from Marawi. And
Okay.
there was like it wasn't that it wasn't unsafe, but then my parents were worried because like at night you could hear like random fireworks slash gunshots. Like you didn't
Wow.
know which one
Okay.
it was, but then I'm pretty sure fireworks don't rapid fire. So you know,
I mean, they
yeah,
can, diba? If you have one of those quites, yung the loud popping the Roman candles. There we go, the Roman candles.
maybe, but then I wasn't seeing any fireworks. I was just hearing the
Okay.
sounds. So yeah, and it was a really strange adjustment because I'm like a Chinese looking guy in a place
Yeah.
where
Right.
it was uncomfortable.
Right.
So they actually were happy that I was moving back to Manila. But then they were still like pushing me to find a job that was similar to that,
Right.
and there were, but then I didn't want to stay in that. I didn't want to stay in that industry. So yeah, it was. It taught me a lot though. Like a lot of the ways that I present knife designs to my clients, especially when I was trying to get the blades off the ground,
Right.
was using the skills that I learned there. Like I do some kind of artwork draft to present to the client, and that's also how I was able to climb my price point because like if I've never done a design before and I want to do it and I know it's going to cost a lot more, I make some kind of design and pitch it, and sometimes people say no and sometimes they do. So that's how the price point gets to climb slowly.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. No. 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 That this is all great because bladesmithing, or as you call it, knife making, isn't the easiest thing to start doing it. Like I personally, me, I'm a fan of Forge and Fire, but I am also afraid of sparks. So I don't really know how to start with all that. So how did you learn? Was
Okay.
this something you learned from when you were doing your apprenticeship, or did you just pick it up later on?
Oh yeah, yeah. No. So in industrial design, we had an entry course into almost every material that you could possibly think of. We've done
Right,
textiles, leathers, woods, metals.
right,
Although I was always fascinated with material science and how to transform a certain material into something usable, right? And how to mix these materials together to make an entirely new product. Like that was like what I thought the spirit of industrial design was. So like I was just really interested in metal and how metal moves and how metal holds a shape. Like not really with 13 Lucky Monkey because they don't, like when you grind silver it doesn't spark.
right.
Like silver does
Okay,
not have a flash. It does not combust.
okay,
Like unlike titanium, which basically explodes when you grind it, it's really
wow,
dangerous. Or
okay,
zirconium, where it sticks to your grinder and then it like it sticks all in one place and then it
okay,
combusts and then it flies like a fireball towards you.
okay.
That's why I
Wow,
always, yeah, yeah. That's
wow.
why I always wear like long sleeves. Like when I'm
Yeah,
grinding metal, I have like a full apron,
yeah,
protective gear, respirator, gloves, and all that, because it's like it's really dangerous. uh I was I was experimenting a lot, and I wasn't doing it the very I wasn't doing it very smart because I didn't really have a mentor for knife making. And like looking back, I would have saved a lot of time if I did. So I was like experimenting with steel and how to sculpt steel using an angle grinder, and then eventually I made the jump and purchased a professional, not a professional, a semi bootleg bench grinder, no, belt grinder. It's like a grinder with a really long sandpaper belt
right. Yeah.
that goes
It
around like that.
yeah, it's one of those parang treadmills na nakatayo. Diba?
Yeah, 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 like
Yeah,
literally like that. Yeah,
yeah.
because like it really makes a difference with the quality of the knives that you're able to make. Like when I was in Iligan, I used to use a file for everything, and I
Wow,
got
okay.
really good results from that. But then I got really tired.
Yeah,
Like this is absolute like just pushing and pulling
yeah.
soft metal. Like it's no way to move metal. And especially with hardened metal, the files just won't cut it. So yeah, when I purchased a semi-functional grinder, there's a local maker. His name is Freddy Ignacio, and
Okay.
he made my first grinder. Like it was not a it was not a good grinder, but then it was a working grinder. It was made of like flat bar and skateboard wheels.
Wow, okay.
Some of the motor wheels were made of plywood, and once in a while the plywood would come loose and fly to the
Oh,
across the shop. So it wasn't the safest one either. That's why like we had to decrease the speed by putting more and all that. But yeah, it actually ruined my belts faster, and um, it was a lot of danger. But then
right.
I made like perfectly good knives on that grinder. It was lovely. It's like, and then I made the investment for a professional grinder. Like it's almost a $2,000 WKM
Wow.
motor.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
okay.
It pays for itself though. It's like it's one of my favorite tools in the workshop. Like if you had like earmuffs on, like
Yes.
you wouldn't know it's on because of just how smooth it's running.
Wow,
Like
okay.
yeah, yeah, it's one of my favorite tools in the workshop, and it really upped my production per month, my productivity per month. So it was a really slow climb, like between paying rent for a space and um, trying paying for new materials, going through the learning curve of learning a new material, and investing in more equipment and my own salary and all the other back ends in running a business. It's been a really slow climb, but then I love it. It was a process.
So I'm pretty sure that at this point, You're not just the only person in Ballet Blades. Am I correct? Like, pretty sure you have a team now, or do you still do everything on your own?
No, I have a studio aide. His name is Michael, and he helps me with a lot of the grunt labor. Like for
Yeah.
example, like cutting materials, keeping the shop tidy, and he's very useful. Like
Right.
he helps me polish the blade sometimes,
Yeah.
and he's still. I still shout at him on a regular basis. But then it's mostly just to remind him of things he's missing out on because like I let him do tasks whereas I have the big picture. So
Right.
sometimes he cuts something like 1 millimeter too small and then
Right.
he has to do it again, which is really irritating on my end because I try to be as specific as possible with my instructions, and if he wastes material I have to shoulder the cost for the material.
Right. Yeah, because it's all at the end of the day, the back end is going to suffer, right? With experimenting on the wrong thing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right. So
exactly.
with the,
But then yeah,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
I
yeah. Okay, go ahead,
sure
Sean. Sorry.
with Michael, like I'm really pleased with the progress. Like we had like a really rough climb to get his standards to what I'm currently looking at. Because like any layperson can cut bar stock, but then the precise way that I need to have everything done is something that is normally lost on your average layperson. Like I think that's the word for it. Because like some of the forms for the knife are very particular. Like I have an example. So there's this piece called the nakiri. Let me just
Okay.
and yeah. So something like this, the profile is very precise, and I
Right.
designed it all from scratch. And I'm very particular with the curves because, like
Right.
for example, this isn't a straight line. It's like a really gentle curve, and
Yeah.
people don't
Okay. I
really
can see
notice it
that.
because it's a
Yeah,
really
I can see
subtle
that.
detail.
Yeah.
But then it just contributes to the entire speed or the look of the piece. It makes the
Yeah.
knife look more aggressive. But then sometimes, he doesn't follow that the way it's
Right.
supposed to be followed, and I get really stressed because the knife looks different. So yeah, but then now we're mostly like we're relatively comfortable with how the work is going.
Right. So the reason I ask that is because knife making, it's kind of a one person job, but running a business, you're gonna need help, right? In the long run.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Especially with all the
So
grunt labor. Like
right.
I need to keep the shop clean. Yeah,
Right.
I
Right.
need to keep
Yes.
the space clean, and I can't spend like half the day polishing a knife. It's like some areas that are relatively brainless to do. I just outsource it or let Michael do, and yeah, no, it's increased my productivity quite a lot, and I'm really happy with it. Now, like back then, it was stressful. It's like he ruined so many knives just to get where he's at
So,
right now.
so do you? Was it difficult for you to kind of mentor this new person? Like, was it because again,
Well,
we're talking about adjustments here, right? So when you got to that point, was it difficult for you to take on this extra person to have to teach him the ropes and then to instruct him and then to have him waste material? We're not shitting on Michael here. This is not a shitting on Michael episode, but it's just I just wanted to learn the intricacies of your industry.
there was a time where I would like show up and like watch him do the work and then maybe get mad a little and then make him watch how I do the work and then he has to do it exactly how I do it. So like I because I have no idea how to teach. Like I'm I didn't know how to teach another human being how to what I do. So it was a process too. It was a little bit of a journey for both of us. Like there were things that I learned while teaching him too. So that was it was not a bad experience.
So
Yeah.
the reason we're going into this a little bit more is because I want to know if bladesmithing or knife making or the industry that you're in is actually something that people can learn right away. Is it a difficult task to learn? Does it take time? How long would it take for somebody like me to learn how to make a knife?
I mean, I think it's possible. Like, um, I think it would take a really long time for someone to learn how to make a knife like that, you know.
Right,
But then I don't think like it's one of those hobbies that a lot of people pick up if they have like if they want to make a tool. Like I know the hobby is pretty popular in the States. Like there's
right.
forums for beginner bladesmiths and forums for beginner knife makers. And some knife making supply shops also carry like knife kits where they sell you like a hardened blade and then you make the handle. So I
Wow.
think it's
Okay.
like a hobby. Yeah, it's possible to learn everything yourself. Like I learned it without a mentor. I don't think it's possible to learn everything yourself because you need a lot of insight from people who are already in the industry. But I believe that you don't need a mentor to teach to like guide your hand to start because I didn't have that.
Right.
But yeah, like with enough like stubbornness, I guess you could probably learn it yourself.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, and there's and you know if you're getting into knife making, there's a lot of soft skills from different areas of craft that you need to learn, like woodworking, metalworking, how to blend wood and metal. Because like some areas, especially the handle, like there's this thing called the bolster, and this bolster is made of titanium, and the handle is made of albino carabao horn. So both of these materials cut very differently. Like if you were to get sandpaper and your finger and you rub that, the carabao horn would depress because it basically grinds off faster than the titanium would. So there's like a learning curve to learn how to make sure that the sculpture is even, the geometry is flat, and it has to look very precise.
Right.
And not
So
like, yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, no, no. Gets. Kasi it's from what you're describing. This seems to be a very technical art form here, with the way you design your blades and you present them to your clients. So how long does a product or a knife usually take in designing? Like how long from the inception of the idea to the final product?
So, well, right now it's a lot shorter because like I already have a pretty substantial portfolio. So whenever people have something made, they just like pick something that I've done in the past and tell me like make something like this, but then don't make it exactly the same because I want you to go crazy with your creativity. I'm like, okay, yes, thank you. So I do something, and you know, I am very transparent about what I'm doing with the knife, especially if it's something new. Like if I want to use a new material, like let's say stainless Damascus or some kind of crazy handle material, I'm super transparent with the client. It's like this is how much it's gonna cost, this is how much extra it might be, and this is how long it's gonna take. So sometimes that's not exactly followed in context of timeline because there's a learning curve and sometimes I mess up. But then normally like from inception of the idea, conception of the idea, that normally takes like a couple days, and then when it's their turn on my wait list, it usually takes like a week to make from start to finish. So like if someone was to order from me now, it would like depending on how complex the design is, it's like we'd finalize everything in a few days, and then like by the time it's ready next year, like February something, it will take around a week to make from start to finish.
Wow, a week. Okay, because we talked about this before we hit record. Forged in Fire only gives you 4 hours, right? And this is
Yeah.
how we're going to get into the Forged in Fire thing, and topic of things. here. Forge and Fire, is that a realistic depiction of what you do? Like
Well,
when you watch, yeah, go ahead.
I'd say not really. Um, so in Forged and Fire, they don't really show you a little bit of the back end because like right after you quench the knife in oil and then it flames up, the knife is as hard as glass. So if you drop it, it will break. So they also temper it in the back end. But then, like putting a knife in an oven for 2 hours 3 times, that's not sexy. You just stare at the knife and then it heats up. So
Yeah,
that's what they do. And I'm not sure if the judges temper it at a very specific temperature because like you can't make a reasonably functional knife in just 5 hours. You need to account for time it would take to temper and yeah, the time it would take to temper because tempering is like a really long process. Tempering like my protocol is um, 3 cycles for 2 hours each. So for example, this knife was soaked at like 250 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours 3 times.
right,
So that makes sure that the knife is extremely stable at its current hardness. Because if you skip out on this tempering cycle, you risk like getting a really brittle edge with like a really unstable steel structure. So it will chip, it will dent, it will crack over time.
right,
And that's basically what we're trying to avoid when you're doing high end stuff.
right. Because you're making essentially heirloom knives here. Right? You want these knives to last for more than a person's lifetime. Is that correct?
Yeah, I
So
like
that's what.
overbuilding my knives. Like, you're probably never gonna need a titanium bolster on a kitchen knife. Like, it's and that part will probably never be stressed enough to the point that the full benefit of the titanium bolster would be experienced. But then it has a nice look, and I like the idea of overbuilding something, and my clients do too. It's like, and for the sake of, in context to handle materials, I stabilize everything. Like that means like you get raw material, and then you put it in a vat of liquid plastic. You pump it, you put it under vacuum, so all the air inside the material goes out, and the liquid plastic goes in, and then you harden the plastic once it's fully soaked into the material. So that just adds another layer of like high performance,
Complexity. Yeah,
yeah, complexity and it in processing. So I try to keep everything in its peak possible in the material zenith, the peak possible performance of the material. Because like you're not gonna need it. It's just a good thing to have. And over
right,
time you'll probably experience the benefits of it eventually.
right,
It's like, yeah, the longevity of the knife will probably not be experienced in your lifetime.
right.
You're
Yeah, I mean, if you
yeah,
do a
yeah.
good job, that's what you're after, right? You want these
Yeah,
knives to last longer than you do because they're metal and they're made to cut
yeah,
things, right? Right. So,
yeah.
I, with your line of work, I mean, I know you're focused on kitchen knives right now, but have you ever thought of branching out into other types of knives?
I actually started with art pieces. I wasn't really doing kitchen knives when I started. I was doing like weird traditional Philippine, like not traditional, cultural Filipino designs
Right,
where I'd like do a really artistic interpretation of a Filipino weapon.
right,
And those didn't sell. Like no one really cared about it enough to pay for it. But then when I did knives, when I did chef knives, it's like chefs love their knives. If you use if a chef is really serious about their knife, and some dishwasher just tossed it in
yeah,
the like in the sink,
yeah,
and chipped a small area of the edge, like that chef's gonna lose his shit.
yeah,
Like they're super particular about the knives that they use, and it's very personal because you're using it. You need it for your livelihood. So it seems like the perfect fit for what I wanted to do, because I wanted to devote my time into making something that someone would value, and not just value once by looking at it, but like actually using it as a tool and it makes me really happy that they're actually using this to make food. So there's a story to it. It's like I use crazy materials to make a knife, and then they use my knife to process materials to make food. You know, it just
Right.
tickles my brain a little bit.
Right. No, I bet that brings you some joy because when you're able to create something, the theme of the first of all, the theme for my current season is talking to creators. When you're able to create something, whether it be like online content or in your case, like an actual tool that has purpose and function, syempre may joy din yun, diba? You're able to experience that joy
Yep.
vicariously. So, have you ever encountered like a client that asked for a ridiculous request, and were you able to fulfill that request?
Well, ridiculous request. There was one client that wanted me to design a knife based off his watch, and
Wow.
um, yeah, no, the watch was a Grand Seiko, and it was a it's almost done because like this knife is really intricate and it has a lot of complex parts. So sometimes I would mess up the blade and have to like spend more for the steel. And this is like one of the most longest projects that I've had because sometimes I just have to put the knife down because if I spend too much time on it, it's like all the other customs would get pushed back. So like this knife has it's almost done. Like the thing has been delayed for over a year already. My God.
Wow.
Yeah. But then I'm like super transparent about this with the client because it's like the materials he wants are already expensive in and of itself. So I can't just throw everything at that
Wha-
knife.
Yeah.
So like and they're all the parts I can't make it in my own workshop. So sometimes I have to outsource like a little to a little bit that needs to be machined because like I don't have a galoosh. It's like I don't have a rose dial. That's like a exclusively watchmaker or like high end watchmaker tool. So
Yeah.
sometimes I need to get parts outsourced, and when I get it back, it's like it's not even. So I have to get it sent out again and
Right.
then retooled. So it's been one of the longest standing projects that I have now, and it's been frustrating for both of us. But then like I'm like I want to do it, and at some point I offered the guy like you know I want to finish this, but then if you can't wait I can offer you a refund because it's like it's taking really long. It's been a year already,
Yeah.
but then I'm really happy that he's patient about it. Like I'm not happy about how long it's taking, but then it's just it's literally the most complex piece that I had to make to date. So and I was super transparent about the every step of the process. So yeah, no, that's I'm almost it's almost done. Like it's just a one single piece that's left, and it'll be good. Like I can't wait to finish it.
Right.
So
Right. So we've talked about different points of the blade making process here. You started with designing, handle construction, grinding, etc., etc. So, what for you as a knife maker is like the most important aspect of knife making?
well, so I'd say it's not just one thing, but then if I was to boil it down to like two things, it would be the handle, like the handle construction, because knives are made to be used and they're supposed to be held comfortably for a long period of time. So I'm really particular about the handle design and how it interacts with the person. It's like we do not have like levers. We have like hands that need to grip an object. So it's like I'm really particular about the handle design and how it fits in your hand and how you interact with it for like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of cutting. So that's one. And then the other one is the edge, like the blade geometry. It's like how the blade is shaped along its edge because that indicates how the knife will cut. It's like you could make a really bad steel cut well for a short amount of time, but then if you make a really good steel, it's like if you make the edge wrong, you're gonna get like a bad knife regardless. You'll need to send it out to someone to get it thinned and fixed up. So yeah, it's edge geometry and ergonomics in context to the handle.
Nice, nice. Okay, so I this is just my this is gonna be my last Fortune Fire question here. But they use different materials on that show. Sometimes unorthodox materials. Like, and you've talked about using titanium and other things in your blade construction as well. So what's like the most complicated or say most different material that you've used? The most untraditional material that you've used in making a knife.
Well, like I'd say for the blade, I'd say it's stainless Damascus. People say Damascus a lot, but then Damascus is really just jargon. It's not Damascus is not material. Damascus is like a jargon term for pattern welded steel.
Right.
Like like imagine two different kinds of steel that's been stacked up and then forged and then folded and then forged and then folded and then twisted to make like a solid to make a solid bar. So
Right.
there's a pattern on the steel,
Right.
and that's essentially what pattern welded steel is. And people just coined it as Damascus because I don't know they think it's cool.
Right.
But then like the quality of Damascus really varies because it's like there are some low end Damascus billets where they use cheap steel and then the Damascus performs horribly. And there are also high end Damascus where you could use like two high end stainless steels to make the pattern, and it performs really well. It looks beautiful. There's just a learning curve to it. So my favorite material to use, hands down, is Damas steel, which is a brand. It's a Swedish brand of high end stainless Damascus, where they use like two high end stainless steels to make like their patterns. Like this one is made of Damas steel, and if you can
Right.
see the pattern, it
Yeah,
has a
it's
really nice.
for the listeners. He's showing us a knife that looks
Yeah,
like lava. Essentially, it's like
yeah,
very
yeah.
wavy.
So yeah, this was a really nice Damas steel pattern, and it's like I love it.
Right. I
So
Yeah. Sorry, I
yeah,
just want to say if you can show the knife again. I do love the part of the tang that has that. Wow, I'm using technical terms here. The part of the tang
yeah.
that looks like it has rock on it. That part on the
This
upper
one.
right. Yeah, yeah. That looks
Okay,
very
yeah,
cool. Is
yeah.
that
No,
also part of the steel? Did you add that in?
oh, it's
How did
something I
you achieve?
sculpted.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. So people ask if I forge these, and no, I sometimes I do, but then in the case of stainless Damascus, like if you forge the steel, you'd probably break it. So in this case, I sculpted it. Like I was a sculptor. Like I trained with Ryan, so I know how to sculpt textures. And when I sculpt this, I'm imagining rock, like chiseled slate, rock,
Right.
something like that. And I wanted an intermediary texture between the blade and the handle. So
Right.
that's what that is. It's like if I didn't add that, it would look pretty bland.
Right.
So it's just for character. And also like a really happy accident was that it's like when you're crushing garlic, you crush it using that texture. So the garlic doesn't
Mm,
fly. Yeah.
right. 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 So that's just really intelligent design if you think
Yeah.
about it. Uh
Sorry.
no, it's fine. Cats are always welcome on the Class Cloud podcast.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so is there as we wrap up here, closing in the last few questions, he, have you ever made a knife that you're really proud of? Like you make this knife and you suddenly don't want to give it to the client because you like it so much.
I mean, in my personal belief, like the knife I'm most proud of is always the next knife.
Mm,
You know, you, I'm not attached to the work because I made the work, right? And I have favorite materials, and they're not favorites because of what they are. They're my favorites because of what they can do and how beautiful it looks like on a knife. It's like I'm not one to really collect objects. I like to collect material because I can process these materials to make more crazy objects. You know, I think that's like a strange difference between makers and collectors. It's like collectors like to keep the finished product, but then makers like to keep the product at a start because it has so much possibilities, and I really love that. I've experimented with some really crazy materials like fossil mammoth ivory and
Wow.
it's like horn, stabilized woods, different steels, different metals that's been folded on itself, like copper,
Mga,
brass, molten.
mga,
It's been
yeah, mga vibranium, wala pa naman ganun. Mga adamantium, you haven't gone into that
yeah, no,
extent
I
yet.
want at some point, yeah. I hope so. Yeah.
All
Well,
right,
but
I
yeah,
guess yeah. Go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
but yeah, no. That's I'm not like there are favorite designs though. Like I really enjoy making nakiris like this one. This one's like
Yes.
specifically a vegetable cleaver, and I really enjoy making like really long blades. Like I'm not trained to use like a 10 or 12 inch chef knife. It's like I find it personally unwieldy because of its size. But then some chefs like they want like a 10 inch gyuto. It looks like a sword. So
Right. I
that
think
was
I've
that
seen
was
that
lovely to me.
yeah, I think I've seen that in sushi restaurants, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, similar. Yeah, it's
Right.
similar. The one in sushi restaurants is like a shujihiki or yanagiba.
Right.
It's a little bit shorter and it's
Right.
also a little bit more precise with what it
Okay.
is in terms of shape. Yeah, but then gyutos are lovely. It's like it's a general prep thing, and I'm not sure what anyone would. No, I am. It's like they use it for large chunks of beef. You're not going to use a 10 inch knife for a potato. You
Right.
know,
Exactly.
probably like large slabs of beef, large slabs of fish. So yeah, those are my favorite designs. I like Japanese style knives, and then I hybrid them. And what that means is like, if you have a Japanese blade, you have like a contemporary modern handle. So that's like what a hybrid is because all Japanese knife handles look the same. They're like
Right.
octagon and straight, and it's like I find it boring.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. So being a blade maker yourself, and this will be my last podcasting question for you. Being a blade maker yourself, I assume that you use the knives that you make. So
Yeah.
does that process help you design your next knife or to fine tune your design process? And if so, what are the favorite things you like to make with your knives?
So I cook. Yeah, I cook and I use all my knives. I've used every single one of my knives at some point because, like, you know, it's not really more for making sure that it works. It's more for, like, just because it looks really pretty and
Right,
I'd
because you
like to
want,
use it.
yeah, I know, I understand. 'Cause you want to test drive the car before you sell it, right?
Yeah, yeah, well, so something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So I've used each and every one of my knives, and um, it's like I really like making like anything out of vegetable. You know, um, it's like I really like chopping up potatoes. I like chopping up carrots. I like chopping up hard vegetables. I like chopping up like large vegetables because that's really when you get to feel the full function of the knife. Like if you're like chopping an onion, maybe, but then if you're chopping like a large potato, then oh yeah, it's cool.
Right.
Yeah, and I've also got a lot of feedback from my clients. Some of my clients are professional chefs, and some of them use it until now. And they have their own knife rolls from other makers because I'm not the only high-end knife maker in the world. Like there are like makers in America, makers in like France, Austria, and all that, Australia. So they get to compare whose work they like the most. And I sometimes I ask if a person's collection is very extensive. Like it's like how does this stack up against say a Don Yugen knife or like a Mareko Mamasi knife? Like let me know how it stacks up against it because I have my own knife making idols and it's more for design than anything. So yeah,
Right. All right. No,
yeah,
very well. Yeah, very well said, Sean. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to me. I really, really learned a lot in our short conversation here. So thank you. So
it's
if
my
you want to
pleasure,
let
man.
the yeah, if you want to let the people know where they can find you on social media, if they want to pick up one of your fabulous knives, please let them know right now.
Well, yeah, they could find me on Baleta Blades. It's just at Baleta Blades on Instagram. If you search Baleta Blades on Google, you'll probably find me. Facebook, Baleta Blade Sean Alonzo. Blade forums, maybe. I don't know. I took down most of my stuff there already
Yeah.
because like it's like the list has been quite crazy. So
Okay.
yeah, just I'll limit it to Instagram, Facebook. So just
Right.
Baleta Blades. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Sean Alonzo of Balete Blades.
Thank you so much, Chino.